Alrighty. So we just finished talking about Noah and the situation that Ham saw him in his nakedness, and we saw that Shem and Japheth walked and covered him, walked in backwards, covered him, and we discussed those scriptures. But now Noah woke up and he made three statements. These three statements are found in Bereshit 9:25 through 27. And these verses, they've been a controversy for a couple of thousand years at least. And the relevance is kind of overlooked in the course of studying, but looking at it in this study, we're going to consider the options or the opinions of the rabbis. And we're also going to consider some ideas that we formulate based on the opinions of the rabbis, but also based on some of the ideas that present themselves within these verses that could easily be overlooked. So let's talk to our Elohim and get his support, and then we'll jump into taking a look at these verses. Heavenly Father, our Master Yahweh Elohim, we thank you for this opportunity to study your word. We ask that you'll open our eyes, open our ears, and open our hearts so that we can see, hear, and understand what your word has to tell us. We thank you for it all in the name of Yahshua. Amen. So, this begins, again, it's Bereshit chapter 9, verse 25, and that's Genesis. And he said, this is Noah speaking, and he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren." Now, as you said, this particular verse has been a source of debate for 2,000 years. And to this day, this debate continues. So we're going to take a look at some of the rabbinical points of view that have been had through the ages. And then we're going to take a look at another side of things. And we're also going to consider some commentaries by a man named Samson Hirsch, who lived in the he lived from 1808 to 18 something or other. But he had some very interesting things. He was a rabbi, a chief rabbi during that time period, the early 19th century. So if we take a look at this, we're going to look at 3 points of view. The first point of view is that this verse is the basis for and the scriptural reference for slavery. The descendants of Canaan were going to be the African peoples, and we know that they've been exploited for a millennia, and that slavery continues to this day in that region. But this explanation doesn't really give us anything that we can apply to how to use this in our lives today. It really doesn't give us anything that we can use. The second thing, or the second commentary, is that Noah could not curse Ham, as Elohim had blessed Ham. If we look at Bereshit 9:1, we can see that in Bereshit 9:1, that it says, "And Elohim blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth." And then he went on to say that the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, and upon all that moves. But we get the point that Elohim blessed Noah. He blessed Shem, Ham, and Japheth as well. So Elohim therefore passed the curse on to Ham's 4th son. We say what Elohim has blessed, no man can curse. So he passed it on to his 4th son. This idea, though, also contradicts the Torah, as Elohim will not curse someone for the sin of another. Okay? Which leads us to the next explanation. The other descendants of Ham would share in the blessings of Yahuwah, And this is prophetically revealed to us in Moses' Cushite wife. Cush was a descendant of Ham. So if we take that idea, then we consider the third idea, that if we look at verse 24, that says, if I go to verse 24, and Noah awoke from his wine and knew that his youngest son had done to him. Knew what his youngest son had done to him. Now, the thing about it is that Ham was not the younger or youngest son of Noah. He was the second son, who according to the book of Jubilees was born 2 years after Shem and 3 years before Japheth. The word his, according to the rabbis, is they're concluding that Noah saw that Ham's younger son had done something. It was his youngest son, it was Ham's youngest son that was being cursed, and this youngest son was Canaan at this time. The rabbis go on to explain that Canaan did something to defile Noah. Now, there's a whole bunch of speculation and there's a whole bunch of pseudo-history that the rabbis like to put into their rabbinical writings that Torah can't confirm, so we're not really going to touch on any of them. But according to this, and according to Torah, if we read it the way it's read, it was Canaan who did something, and Ham saw the nakedness that Canaan had produced in Noah. But Ham didn't do anything about it. He went on to tell his brothers about it. So that was the reason for Noah cursing Canaan. He didn't curse Ham. He cursed Canaan for a transgression. Now like I say, in the book of Jubilees, and this is in Jubilees 10, 29 through 34, if we read the book of Jubilees, we find out that there was another curse that Canaan brought upon himself, and that he settled into land that belonged to Shem. This land would be known as Canaan, and would be returned to the descendants of Shem, who were to destroy the curse of Canaan from off the face of the earth. Okay? This is why Elohim said, when you go into Canaan, blot it out completely. The Canaanites became a very, very wicked people. They became a very idolatrous people whose acts of worship dealt in perverse sexuality. So this went contrary to Elohim. We see that this perverse type of worship actually drew in the Israelite males, and we found that in our study of the Torah portion of Balak. So this is another idea which we get, the third idea. So from these three explanations, we really don't receive a whole lot of support or instruction as to how to apply this to our lives. We really don't get any instruction from our Elohim other than the consideration that what Elohim has blessed, no human can curse. What Elohim has blessed, no human can curse. So we go back to a 17th century, and actually I should say 19th century rabbi named Samson Hirsch, 1808 to 1888, gave what was perhaps the most insightful interpretation of this particular verse and its application to our lives. He stated that the three sons of Noah represent three aspects or types of person. That this particular type of person deals with sensuality, where another type of person like Shem deals with spirituality, and we'll see that Japheth deals with feeling. But he defined Ham and Canaan as representing raw sensuality, which has no control over itself. This is a completely carnal sensuality that has lost all control over itself, and thus all reserve or respect for anything or anybody. This type of person has no respect for anything or anyone of a spiritual nature, and as such has no respect for Yahweh Elohim. Now, these people are enslaved to the passions that rule them. This explains the phrase, servants of servants. In our own studies, we've considered the adverse effects of uncontrolled emotion and what it can do to our lives. So we find two applications in this verse that we can actually put into our idea toolbox. The first one is that what Yahweh Elohim has blessed, no human can curse. And the second one, that we can become enslaved to our emotions, passions, and desires if we do not allow them to be covered by the blessing of Elohim. Okay? So we can take those two things away from this verse 25. But we can also develop another idea from this. If we consider that Ham was the second child of Noah, then Ham represents the letter Beit, which as the number 2 represents division. From this we consider that we can separate ourselves from the blessing of Elohim through Canaan, the fourth son. 4 represents the Dalet, which shows the sensual side, if it's left unchecked, will lead us into a state of spiritual poverty. First, we separate ourselves from Elohim. We don't allow the spirit of Elohim to cover us. We say Mashiach, the anointing of Elohim, lifts off, which leaves us totally uncovered. And then we try to cover it with something else. And if we, in this state, don't make teshuvah, Ham didn't make teshuvah. He went out and told his brothers. Okay? Then we try to cover ourselves with our own imagined blessing and prosperity in order to cover up our sin. What does this remind us of? The story out of Bereshis, where Ish and Isha recognized that they had transgressed, but they covered themselves with fig leaves. Instead of saying, Elohim, we've transgressed, they tried to cover something up. Which brings us to Gimel, that this is the third letter of the Aleph Beit. So if we consider that the third and the fourth are involved, we consider Shemot 20, 3 and 4, which tells us, it'll tell us something as soon as I get there. See all this taking time to get everything lined out. Shemot 20, 3 and 4 tells us that, well, 3 says, you shall not make unto yourself a graven image or any manner of likeness of anything that is in heaven, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. When we try to cover it up, we make ourselves Elohim, first of all, and we replace Elohim with an image that is on the earth, which is ourselves. But then it says, you shall not bow down unto them, nor serve them, for I, Yahweh Elohecha, that is your Elohim. That is, Elohecha is not your as in a group. He's talking to you individually. Your Elohecha, or your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and the fourth generation of them that hate me. So, keeping in mind third and fourth, that if we try to cover up, and if we fall into a state of spiritual poverty, and if we separate ourselves from Elohim because we don't keep his commandments, it's the same as basically hating Elohim. Okay? Everybody with me? All right. So let's consider verse 26. And Noah said, and he said, blessed be Yahweh, the Elohei of Shem, and let Canaan be their servant. So in this verse, we have to first consider the first phrase, which says, blessed be Yahweh. It's illustrating that it is Yahweh who receives the blessing first, and then it is considered the Elohei of Shem. So what can we consider from this if Elohim is blessed by the actions of Shem? Shem, we've talked about it in our previous studies, is a name or a word that means name, it means glory, it means reputation. We've also considered that the name Yahweh illustrates to us both existence from its root Yehi, but also from its other roots tells us that the name means or represents everything that there is, everything that there was, everything that there will be, today, yesterday, and tomorrow. So what we see there in the Elohei of Shem, we can consider that it is Yahweh who judges and rules our lives. Elohim doesn't mean God. There's not really a word for God in Hebrew. Elohim, like we've talked about, means mighty one. It means ruler. It means judge. Its roots refer to restoration, redemption, rest. So in the Elohei of Shem, we can consider that Yahweh is the one who judges and rules our lives, bringing us rest, redemption, and restoration in everything throughout all times in our lives. So we bless Yahweh Elohim by respecting his name, his glory, and his reputation by following his instructions, his Torah. There's some scriptures that you can look up. Well, take a look at a couple of them. Devarim 6:4. If I can get the Devarim 6:4. Says, well, Devarim 6:4 and 5 says, "Hear, Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh is one. And you shall love Yahweh Elohecha with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." And this is actually quoted there in Matthew 22:37 by Yeshua. He's quoting this particular scripture. Joshua 22:5 says, "Only take diligent heed to do the commandment and the Torah which Moses, the servant of Yahweh, commanded you, to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, to keep his commandments, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul." And then Devarim 7:9 says, "Know therefore that Yahweh Elohecha, he is the Elohim, the faithful El, who keeps covenant and mercy with them that love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations." Well, we've talked about the third generation and the fourth generation of the ones that hate him. What about the 1,000th generation? Because back in Shemot it also says, "But showing mercy unto the 1,000th generation of them that love me." What is 1,000? 1,000 is the numerical value of the Aleph. What does the Aleph represent? It represents Yahweh Elohim. That to love our Elohim in everything that we are in our existence today, yesterday, and tomorrow, we show back our love through his name. And then he restores us, redeems us, and delivers us from whatever it is that we need to be delivered from by his name, who is Yeshua. Okay? So, where were we? In keeping the commandments of Yahweh Elohim, we are able to keep the flesh in subjection, and thus we can, based on our understanding of verse 25, understand the relevance of the phrase, "and let Canaan be their servant." Rabbi Hirsch, in explaining the blessing in verse 26, says, "Freedom is achieved, or is only achieved by those who can master and control themselves." He goes on to say that Shem teaches of an Elohim who not only served as the original force to call the heavens and earth into being, but is still the mover of heaven and earth. He still rules everything, so that every fiber of our being and every impulse of our will belongs to him. We can still rule over our emotions if we will build our relationship with our Elohim. And this is what Shem teaches us. And we'll talk more about what Shem teaches us here in verse 27, which says, Elohim enlarged Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem